Hi and welcome. I'm excited to have special guest Adam Stokes. He is an Australian economist, a financial commentator, a YouTube creator, and crypto analyst. The link to his book, 28 Pro Trader Tips, is in the description. Welcome, special guest Adam Stokes. Thanks for being here.
Great to be here. Thank you.
And also, of course, we have our stunning, beautiful Hex and PulseChain and crypto ladies, Hodpro and Sammy Chica. Ladies, great to see you. Thanks for being here.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Some of you may not know, but Hodpro was mining Bitcoin back in the day. She's an ex-game dev. She is a crypto ambassador. And Sammy Chica has been in the Hex and PulseChain admin groups for years. And she has been a very strong advocate for crypto and for ladies in crypto and everyone in crypto. So, yeah, I feel honored to be a part of this panel with you all today. Thanks so much for being here. Now, let's say hi to the chat. Really cool that we're going to have a nice little turnout here for Adam today. I do have the link for today's stream in the chat, so please feel free to share that out. And props to Red Squirrel, who was first in the chat. And I'll say hi to John J, Crypto7, Big Bears, Flight. And we'll say hi to people as they come in. Exadelic, hey, how you doing? Thank you for supporting Doz the other day with his stream at Hex Down Under stream. That was really cool. Evan Floyd, hi and welcome. Welcome to DBunny19, My Online Ghost. Academaciated, one day I'll say your name right. And D Hexian Arth. Good to see everyone as they roll in. So what do you reckon, guys? Should we do like a couple little warm-up things, or should we go bam straight into it? Player's choice.
Let's warm up. Let's warm up.
Let's warm up. I like a little Chinese warm-up. Yeah. Okay, so Adam did this to Richard back in the day, like 2 years ago. Adam Stokes, he streamed with Richard twice, and they were long streams. Like, I was worried about like their bladder strength and like all these things, and I was like, wow, this is like, whoo, long stream. So like, I reckon Richard loves Australians, right? Like, he's just let a few little things out the bag lately. Just, paying homage to all of us down under, which is fantastic. So it's the same game that Adam played with Richard, which is the one-word game, except instead of one word, it's 3 to 5 words. But obviously, like, the less words, the better. So I give you like a little like prompt, and then you guys all have to say your one word or 3 to 5 words. Okay, are you ready?
Ready.
Richard Hart, Hodpro.
So wait, I just say like 3 to 5 words that come up?
Yeah, or preferably one, like the less words the better, but max 5.
Oh, man.
You can also pass.
Visionary.
Oh, nice. Sammy Chica.
Funny, crazy, intelligent.
Oh, very good. Adam Stokes.
Different.
You guys are going great. All right, I'm going to have to up my game here.
Now I know how to play. So
we're going to go reverse order now. Who is Satoshi? Adam.
We are Satoshi.
Oh, Sammy Chica.
An Asian man that made Bitcoin.
Hodpro.
British edgelord.
Ooh, very nice. Okay, here's another one. Who is Hexlina?
Sailor Moon.
Oh. Sammy.
She pulses a lot. Don't know who she is.
Lols.
Adam Stokes.
No idea.
No idea. Well, okay. Yep. Well, that makes 2 of us there. Sometimes I'm like, it's Richard. And then I'm like, no.
It can't be.
It's not.
I wish. Awesome.
Okay, I got a couple more of these. I got 2 more. Okay. Here we go. Hodbro. BTC.
Bitcoin. I mean, this is what comes up.
Big kahuna.
Oh, Adam.
Number 1.
Oh, love it. Okay, here we go. Reverse order. Adam, you're first. Hex.
Different.
Sammy.
Pink and yellow.
I was thinking, what color does that make? And I'm like, mixed up red, yellow, orangey, pink. Like peach. Okay, puzzle.
Toddle token.
Oh, very nice, very nice. I'm gonna do one last one because I neglected the chat. I don't know if we have any admins in the chat, but I'm loving some of the words that are coming out in the chat as well.
Oh, they're playing too. Oh,
they're playing as well, which I can only. That's great. Okay, last one, and the chat can get on board as well. The SEC. Podpro.
oh man. Pause.
Sammy.
Dirty dogs.
Adam.
Corrupt.
Oh, there we go. We've hit the controversy. All right. We're going to ease into the questions. Ladies, you also can chime in. The questions are primarily directed at Adam here, our special guest. But like I was saying before the show, I'd also like to hear your perspective and questions to Adam and vice versa. He can ask us questions. Chat, you can also ask questions. First question. Adam, do you think it's important for crypto to be permissionless, especially with the future introduction of CBDCs?
Yes, so there are many different cryptos, and I think it's fine to have many different cryptos. And I actually think some cryptos do require permission. But when we look at the number one coin, Bitcoin, being permissionless, it changes the way that money is designed. It changes the architecture of money. So for the people, it's important that it's permissionless, but for the governments and the banks, it's not. And in many instances, you can see the banks and the governments are in bed together. They are one and the same in the sense that one claims to print the money and the other one claims to have the permission to do it by the governments. That is, when the interest rates get too high, the governments say it wasn't us. And when the banks put the interest rates, they say it wasn't us. So they're in this endless circle of pointing at each other saying it was the other person. But that doesn't help any of us as people when it comes to the permission of using these systems. So there's kind of two parts. For the people, yeah, it needs to be permissionless. But when it comes to governments controlling money and controlling people and controlling the narrative, they absolutely want the permission to be based on their opinion and on their power.
Exactly. And do you have any concerns about CBDCs? I mean, do you see them in our imminent future?
CBDCs are definitely coming. They are the foundation of tyranny. All they are, a CBDC is essentially just a fiat on steroids. A CBDC is, we're already using digital money. So when I go on traditional financial stations and talk about money, they say, well, I put it to you, a CBDC is going to come. And I say, well, of course it's coming. It's definitely coming. And the other thing that I try to explain to normies, if you will, is that we're already using digital money. Whether we want to look at it as a tap and go, as in a card or an EFT, electronic funds transfer, or using our credit cards, or doing transfers from one country to another or one business to another, we're already in the digital space. The question is, though, when we move on to a new money, hopefully a scarce hard money, who does that help? Well, it helps all of us little people at the bottom. But when it comes to the big people at the top, they, of course, don't want a scarce hard money. They want an endless fiat. And all a CBDC is an extension to the fiat system that we've already got. It just gives them more power, the ability to put geographical borders on your money, better tracking devices, easier to print it, easier to burn it, easier to do whatever they want with it. So CBDC is already most certainly on the way. We can see in Australia that there's been considerable research and papers written onto the introduction of CBDCs. But the irony with a CBDC, I think, is that you may see a very interesting situation where retail banks are in fact standing up against governments, because the danger for retail banks is, in essence, a CBDC can bypass retail banks. And that actually compromises the business of retail banks, particularly when it comes to fractional reserve lending. So the irony of a CBDC, as much as we hate it as the people, is that the banks, who in many instances are our enemy, figuratively or literally, they also won't like a CBDC, because it will allow a central bank, as the name implies, central bank digital currency, to bypass the retail banks. And if a central bank or a government or one and the same is bypassing a retail industry bank, they will probably stand up and say, well, hang on a second, if you're going to exclude us from this system where we got to make lots of money from printing it either through fractional reserve lending or fees or charges or whatever, we've got a problem with this. We're going to lobby against you. So the irony with that CBDC is that we could in fact see the banks become our friends, not because they like us, but because they want to actually maintain their power in printing that money.
Temporary alliance.
That's
wow,
right.
I haven't
The
heard
enemy
that
of my enemy is my friend.
before. That's really interesting. Like I don't know if you guys saw that footage from China, how the CBDCs are linked to people's geographic location. So you scan in, you scan out. They have the social credit rating system, which is a little bit scary. I appreciate your thoughts on that, Adam. I wanted to get into, like, before we progress to the next question, just going backwards a little bit in terms of monetary policy and fractional reserve systems. I think in general, I would say people have not woken up and realized why we're in crypto in the first place. The banking system is corrupt. It's the biggest corrupt cartel that has ever existed. But the genius is that nobody knows it. And it all comes down to the money is debt, and it's a fractional reserve system. And people don't understand the mechanics behind it. So the Federal Reserve is not a government power. It's not elected by the people. And yet it has the power to print money, and it has the power to increase our interest rates over and over and over and over again. And who pays? The middle class, the mums and dads. And who do they pay to? They pay to the banks. And so they have the power to print money and cause our inflation. And at the same time, they have the gall to say, oh, let's rein in inflation and also increase interest rates endlessly. And you can pay all that extra money to us, the banks. This is a ridiculous monetary policy system, and it's not working. You can't just print money forever. And that's why we're in crypto, because we're finding a way for generational wealth, and we're finding a way out of that system. What are your thoughts?
It's interesting. I had a breakthrough just this morning. I think when I speak to traditional financiers, we've got a case of Stockholm syndrome. That is, when people learn about crypto and Bitcoin, they get very angry about it. And there's a couple of reasons why they get angry about it. First of all, they don't understand it. But second of all, they may be exposed to the biggest lie of their life. And that is, what is money? Where is money coming from? And I think, CryptoClass, you've summarized that very well, that it's the biggest scam in the world. So fiat is the biggest scam in the world, and the banks are the facilitators of this biggest scam in the world. What happens is, when we tell normies about money, when they understand money, one of my degrees is economics, and I truly didn't understand money, even though I should have with that degree. I didn't understand money until I got into crypto, in particular into Bitcoin. And so when I try to explain to normies what Bitcoin is, I have to really start with what money is. And when most people think there's this mythical, magical cave where there's a big pile of gold, and all the money that's circulating around the world is linked to this magical cave full of gold. Well, there is no link. They just print it and it comes out of nowhere. So when you actually challenge someone's paradigm of where money comes from and what money is, it's a very emotional journey. Often when I teach in public forums, once I was teaching the Australian Federal Police, an investigative unit, about how money works. And I actually had to forewarn the audience what I was about to say might be quite confronting. And although this was a room full of professionals, you could see that there was a lot of emotion in the room, because when I explained what money was and where money was coming from and how Bitcoin is the antithesis to it, there was a lot of emotion stirred up in the room. Now, that is on a semi-macro level, but when we go to the micro one-on-one, the same emotion occurs. I thought I knew what money was. You're lying to me. Bitcoin's a scam. And so what happens is we move into this Stockholm syndrome, where those who are held hostage by the fiat systems actually defend those who are taking them hostage, whether it be the banks, whether it be the government, whether it be the concept. They fight for fiat and say, no, fiat is real. It is good. You're wrong, Adam. Bitcoin is a scam. Crypto is a scam. It's all a scam. And of course, the real message is, no, what we're doing is the antithesis to the scam. So the first part to all of this is education. And I've often said on my channel, why is it that in school, in the public system, we spend a lifetime learning how to earn money? That is, get an education, in quotes, go to university, get a job, and then earn this magical thing called money. But we never learn what money is. So we go through this whole life of learning how to get money, but never what money is. Yet they will teach us about, as an example, 400 genders and trigonometry and algebra and all of these different things, but they won't tell us the core, the layer one foundation to all of society. The layer one foundation to everything that we do in the world is money. If you want to be a charity, you need money. If you want to be a good parent, you need money. If you want to buy Louis Vuitton stuff, you need money. No matter what it is, it's money. So why aren't we taught about money? And the reason, in my opinion, that we're not taught about money is because, as Henry Ford said, I'll quote very terribly here, basically, if the masses knew where money came from, there would be riots on the street the very next day. And as a result, if we keep the population fat, dumb, and happy, and keep feeding them their stimmy checks and enough TV and Netflix, and in some countries legalizing certain drugs, so and putting alcohol on the shelves, you're so distracted with, well, my belly is full, I'm entertained, bread and circus, if we use a Roman analogy. They don't dive deep into what's happening in the real world. But of course, what crypto has done, many people came for the Lamborghini. I say we came for the Lambo, but we stay for the revolution. That is, most people came into crypto to get money. And that's cool. They came in because they wanted to get rich. But somewhere along this journey, they're like, hang on a second. Everything that I've been doing for the last whatever my life is has been a scam. And then they realize this isn't the antithesis to the biggest scam in the world. Meanwhile, the real scammers are pointing at us and projecting their scam onto us. And they're saying, oh, they're the scammers. They're the evil ones. They're the money launderers. They're the ones doing something wrong. When in reality, it's the fiat system and all the tools around that fiat system. The governments that are addicted to it through money printing, both sides, left and right, this is totally bipartisan. The banks and financial institutions that are the facilitators of this scam system. Everyone at the very top who enjoys money printing, where they receive the benefits of the first round of money printing. But then, as you mentioned earlier, Crypto Class, is that once it trickles down to all of us, we are the ones who are punished for the failures of fiat. It's so ironic that when they put the interest rates up, they point at us, and I say governments, they point at us and say, you've been spending too much. But the reality is we haven't been spending too much. The governments have been spending too much. They spent too much by printing too much money to do what they wanted to do. And when it gets out of control, they point at us and say, right, we're going to punish you, the people, because we spent too much money. We're going to take money out of your pockets because we diluted everyone's money in their bank accounts. Now, the banks can't lose because when the interest rates are low, they lend out more loans and make more money. But when the interest rates are high, sure, there are less loans going out, but they're now getting a bigger return on the loans that already exist. And the rich people can get the loans anyway. So no matter what happens in this system, the banks and the governments will win, but the people will lose. And that is why there is a big movement now that we came for the Lambo, we stay for the revolution.
Agree. And I think that's very well said. I think the gap between the rich and the poor is getting increasingly larger, which concerns me for a lot of reasons, right? It's quite sad to see people in poverty because the kids suffer, and the crime goes up, domestic violence goes up, a lot of things. It's not pleasant to watch. And then the buffer in between, of course, is the middle class, which seems to work and pay for everything. So we're going to move on to our next question, but Sammy, Chica, and Hodprul, do you want to ask Adam anything before we move on?
I guess I just want to say that I think the biggest indicator of crime is actually not low, everybody being poor, but it's actually income disparity, kind of to expand on what you're saying, Claz. And that's a scary notion, right? That means, it's usually indicative of people rising up and all the, perhaps they should, but it's definitely not a calm linear environment when that sort of thing's happening. And
it happens on a local scale and it happens on a world scale. And Ray Dalio's probably got the best sort of take on that in The Changing World Order and his in his book and his podcasts on that. Very interesting stuff. Okay, we're going to move on to our next question. Adam, why do you think BTC should be the next global reserve currency?
In one word, it's trustless. So when we look at, no matter which financial system we have, ultimately what it comes down to is absolute power corrupts absolutely. So whoever that is, whether it's America, Australia, England, if we go as Ray Dalio is the good example when we looked at, the Dutch Empire, the British Empire, the American Empire, and in the Changing World Order, potentially the Chinese Empire. But all fiat always fails. And the reason why it always fails is because absolute power corrupts absolutely. So no matter who's in charge, and you'll hear in my channel sometimes I figuratively pick on the United States. Not that I've got any issue with America. I lived in America. I loved in America. I served with Americans. I fly the American flag in my
That's
office.
all right. We'll take it.
Well, it's funny you should say that, Hodril, but because I was talking to Evan Floyd the other day, an American over at Mississippi. Shout out to Evan. I think I saw him in the chats.
He's in the chat, yeah.
And for all, why I've got so much love and respect for America is that I think like Australia is that we can actually look at ourselves. We can actually introspectively look and say, well, hang on, what are we doing wrong here? And anything that we see wrong with the US dollar and the global reserve currency is nothing against the American people, but in fact, a reality of human nature. When I first lived in America, actually, when I first went to America, I think I was 15. And what I remember the first time I went to America was I looked at it, I said, oh, America's kind of like Australia, but kind of 10 years in the future. Not with technology. Some things were really backwards, like you were still using checkbooks. And I'm like, how are you using a checkbook? You're cavemen, you're America. But I now know why you were using a checkbook, because the big financial systems were holding on to these old financial tools. And that's what we're seeing at the moment as money moves forward. It's like, no, we can't let this money progress. We need to hold on to the financial tools that we've got so we can make the financial profits. When I lived in America in, I think, 2002, I went to university for a year in America. I realized that the gap between Australia and America being 10 years, it had kind of squeezed down to 4 or 5 years. Now I would argue that the gap between the way we operate in America and Australia is probably 6 months. And I guess the revelation I had in this is it's not about America and Australia and other countries. It's about human nature. It's about human beings. Ultimately, we're all the same. We all bleed red. We all want to look after our family. We all want to get ahead. We all want to be healthy. We all want to relax. We want the path of least resistance. And it doesn't matter who's in charge, whether it's the Spanish, the Portuguese, the Greek, the Romans, the Dutch, the British, the American, the Chinese. Ultimately, absolute power corrupts absolutely. So how do you decentralize this power? Well, you need a trustless, borderless, open, neutral, censorship money, and whatever censorship resistant rather money. And whatever it is, as long as we all have the same rules, it becomes fair. Where money is broken at the moment is that there's rules for me and rules for thee, and different rules for thee. These different rules for different people makes the game broken. If we were playing a game of football, or well, I'll say basketball as an example, and I was allowed to tackle you and kick you and run with the ball, but you had to stick to the rules of basketball where you couldn't double dribble, you couldn't tackle, and you couldn't kick the ball. That's not a fair game. And people would walk off the field and say, well, I don't want to play that game because there's different rules for you than there are for me. But in the financial systems, we can't walk off this field because what backs the money of fiat is violence. Ultimately, it goes all the way down the chain. You will use our money or we'll put you in a cage, or you will use our money or we will bomb you. So what do? How do we, as humans, as a global village, what do we do with the money that we all want to have access to, but we all want to be fair with? And the only way we can do it is through what Satoshi Nakamoto has done. You need to decentralize the power. So many people get bogged down in the concept when I talk about BTC being the global reserve currency. They say, no, it's too slow and my coin's better and this and that. And that may all be true. It may be slower than a different coin. It may be proof of work over proof of stake, which is not a flaw, but absolutely a feature of the coin. But ultimately, what it comes down to is on the global stage, I don't trust you, you don't trust me, we don't trust them, and they don't trust us. So the only solution to all of this is a trustless money. And the best trustless money that we have in the world at the moment is Bitcoin. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, there will be more than one coin, and that's fine. There's more than one car. What's better, a car or a truck? Well, it depends what you want to do. What's better?
El Camino.
Well, for me, I love my Beamers. But when it comes to money, there will be different monies, and that's okay. There is different money, there are different languages, there are different dances, there are different genders, there's different music, there's different lots of everything. That's fine. But when it comes to a global reserve, we need one. And in nature, something will rise to the top. At the moment, the global reserve currency is the United States dollar, and it is a completely corrupt system. They keep printing this worthless crap, and it hurts all of us, including eventually those at the very top. So when I go out there and I say, well, what's the antithesis? What's the solution? What's the answer to all of this? And the only technology we have at the moment that solves all of this is Bitcoin. Again, I emphasize that doesn't mean there won't be other coins. Different coins do different things, just as different websites have different purposes and different vehicles have different purposes. That's okay. It is really okay. But when we're trading on the global stage and we're looking for that anchor point and we need confidence and we can have so much trust that we can remove trust entirely through trustlessness, we actually need a decentralized system, a decentralized ledger, something that we can all be part of, but none of us can completely control. There have been many arguments about the 51% hack that fell through. There was arguments that it broke back in 2010. Yes, thank you for 2 hacks. That was very quickly fixed, and there hasn't been any problems since then. And even when those problems did occur, the system corrected itself very quickly. So ultimately, we have 15 years of data that this thing works. But I close with this. If we can come up with a better solution than Bitcoin, I'm all in. But at the moment, this is the best thing that we've got. It doesn't take away from all the other coins and all of their systems. The XRP army might get angry because they say, well, our coin's better and faster, and they're missing the argument. Sure, your coin may be faster, and you may have huge liquidity pools, but it's like, again, the car and the truck. I'm not competing with a truck when I'm trying to build a car, or vice versa.
Well, and these coins also just follow Bitcoin as well to a huge degree. So it's not, I mean, you can get tribal with it and pick which coin, but you know, what you're saying is general to all crypto, but it really is mostly Bitcoin of, you know, that is the reason it was created in the first place, actually.
If you think about all the competitors to Bitcoin when it first came out, there was, you know, Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin Diamond, Bitcoin Black, Bitcoin Gold. And in fact, I was reviewing Hex so early that some don't want to admit this, but Richard Hart originally called Hex Bitcoin Hex. And so so if you look at my video from years ago, I've had the honor of interviewing Richard Hart 3 times, but I've deep dived into his stuff well before it came out, and that was when it was Bitcoin Hex. And initially it was like, this is a better Bitcoin. And some people argue, you know, Hex is a bit better Bitcoin. And I say, look, it's different. It's like, dare I say, because I'm speaking with 3 lovely ladies here, where they say, you know, women are better men or men are better women. It's like, let it go. You know, women are these beautiful part of the civilization that need to be
let it go. We are clearly better.
And men
so
are
I'll just push back a little bit on the Bitcoin thing, if that's okay, Adam.
Sure.
Firstly, I would like to say I love Bitcoiners, and if you want to send me 100 Bitcoin, you'd make my day. I think the whole crypto space undoubtedly follows Bitcoin. The stability of Bitcoin is crucial for the stability of all cryptocurrency because it's such deep liquidity. We need it for institutional investments, right? For everybody to have confidence in crypto. So it and everything, all the liquidity is tied to it. Bitcoin goes up, everything goes up, and vice versa. So we need Bitcoin. Love Bitcoin, but in terms of it being the global reserve currency, I don't have a solution for the global reserve currency, but just to say that I think focusing on one coin probably is not the best idea in my opinion. A couple of things just to have a little dig at Bitcoin, just to promote Hex, because as you can see here, like I'm a Hexagon, PulseChain, so I just got to give it a little, rep, So in terms of the tech, like I hate to quote Richard all the time, but he says it's spaghetti code. And the reason, you just can't really build features on it, right? So the ordinals were kind of these crammed in data points that they kind of crammed into these blocks, and then they called them, these ordinals or NFTs. But the whole thing just jammed the system and slowed things down. And my next question is about ordinals because they concern me a little bit because we all rely on Bitcoin. The next thing about censorship resistance, I think Hexagons, PulseChains have got that down. Like we can run the bridge on our own computer. We can run the DEX on our own computer. In Bitcoin, most of Bitcoin is on centralized exchanges. For us, we self-custody our keys. So the majority of Hexagons self-custody their keys. So in terms of being decentralized or censorship resistant, we've got that. Permissionless, we're all into crypto. We're all into that philosophy. I think we all share that view. And then price go up. So in order to put faith into a crypto, the price has to go up. Bitcoin has diminishing returns. It has this, like I have been impressed with Bitcoin because it has outperformed ETH in the last, say, this 2023, it's outperformed ETH. You can put a BTC ETH chart up and you can clearly see that Bitcoin has outperformed ETH. I've been, and that has actually changed my mind on Bitcoin. I used to be like, oh, it's an old granddaddy, you can't move it. And yes, it does have diminishing returns, but look, it outperformed ETH. So I am a fan of Bitcoin, but diminishing returns as well do concern me because in traditional finance, they've become addicted to making no gains. Like in, these long-term bonds, what are they making? Like 7%, and then inflation's 5%, they're making 2%. But they're making nothing and they're addicted to it, and they stand there and they defend their position in their investments. To me, and I'm in crypto. I'm not in it for 2%. The Bitcoin, like last cycle, went from 20K to like 60K. So that's like a 3x. Everything has diminishing returns, like when you have repeated cycles in crypto. So if you're super wealthy already and you're getting a 2x, like institutions, that's fantastic. You've got something that's, you secure. You believe it is at least going to go like a double in a cycle. That works out for institutions, but does it work out for the retailers? I'm not so sure.
Yeah, and I just want to say also that I'm a Bitcoin bull. I've always liked Bitcoin, and it's the reason I got into crypto. But being a Federal Reserve currency, I mean, maybe it's the closest thing we've got, but until it stabilizes, who wants to pay $40 for a pair of shoes one day and then it be worth like $1 the next? It just doesn't fit. I think we need a lot more adoption, and it needs to be stable in regards to making payments with it and using it every day.
Okay. So Adam, do you want to say any rebuttals there, or should we move on to the ordinal question?
Yeah, no, that was good. I will, if I may. So remember, it's not binary. That is, you don't just have to have one coin. There'll be many coins. So diminishing returns means that through each cycle, the SIC gains that you make each time gets smaller. So you're still making money, but the returns aren't going up 10,000x. So like 10,000x, then 5,000x, then 30x, then 10x, then 3x, then 2x. And we've been doing that primarily with the retail money. But diminishing returns and risk are deeply intertwined. That is, sure, the returns each cycle may not be so sick, but the risk also goes down significantly. So no risk, no return. And ultimately, the bigger the risk, the bigger the reward. They are deeply intertwined. So many people are focusing so much on, I'm making so much return and it's going to do 10,000x. And that may be true, but the risk is typically 10,000 times greater as well. So if you look at Bitcoin in the early days, it was so risky, but the reward for that risk was massive returns. And the same as with Hex. If you got in early, it was risky. Now, if you got in really early, you got free Hex, essentially. But most people came into the Hex space from trading their ETH or buying it, getting onto an on-ramp. And the reward that they got for that early adoption was a very good return. When we actually look at, this mass adoption, ultimately, crypto is not adopted yet. We're only looking at sort of 5% of the world's population that has really got into this space. So a rising tide lifts all ships. And at the moment, 50%, it's currently 48.95% with the data I have right in front of me. So we'll call it 50% to round it up. 50% of all the money in crypto is in Bitcoin. And as a result, that indicates a lot of confidence. Now, in the global space, there is not a huge amount of confidence in crypto because we're only looking at 5 to 10% of the world's population who are even in this thing. But then of all the people who are in it, 50% of that money is in fact in Bitcoin. When we look at a daily trader, I don't think actually Bitcoin needs to be a daily trader. I think on the white paper, they indicated that it was going to be this new money. But an example I use is, and I'm stealing it from Andreas Antonopoulos, something may be designed for something, but when it finds its place in the market, it might be used for something else. So, Hodpool, I'm guessing you're American, but I'm not sure if you're from California.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Oh, there you go. So California is a really good example. I lived in California for nearly a year, and there was, I remember going to some parties where they had swimming pools that were empty, and they were using these swimming pools as skateboard ramps.
Oh, yeah, that happens.
And what it linked to was there was I think it was a massive drought at some time in California, and people couldn't afford to fill up their pool, so they emptied it. And then these skaters said, well, hang on, that looks like a pretty good skateboard ramp. And there you have this thing actually just molded into a skate park in your backyard.
It's Santa Cruz culture. Oh, absolutely. They do that. Oh, yeah.
Now, some people might come in and say, hang on, it was meant to be this, and they didn't design it to be a skate park. It was meant for water. How dare you skate in it? And sometimes I see that argument a little bit into Bitcoin. It's like, it was supposed to be there every day to be as a daily trader. How dare you use it as a global reserve? And I actually say that the truth is in the markets.
Well, look at Mt. Gox. That was supposed to be used for trading Magic the Gathering cards, and that ended up being the
great example. Yeah,
exchange for Bitcoin.
And when we look at how much is on exchanges, I think I've got Steve J in the comments there. Steve J, if you could leave in the comments. The majority is not on exchanges. We've only got about 1.9 million coins on exchanges, which is a very small amount, which is on exchanges. Now, whether we want to self-custody it in our own wallets, we have that option. Or if we want to get lazy, which many people do, myself included, and leave it on an exchange for someone else to manage, that's a greater risk, but it's less work for me. But the choice is there. Ultimately, the choice is we can leave it on exchange, or we could self-custody it. When it comes to fiat, you kind of don't have that option. You might say, well, hang on a second, I can pull the money out and put it under my mattress. That's true, but you can't stop inflation. You can't stop the money printer going brr.
Nice one, Adam. Good stuff. Okay, here's another couple BTC questions for you. So I believe in the health and stability of BTC. I think it's crucial for the health of all crypto. Do you think the Ordinals or BRC20s could compromise the stability of Bitcoin?
It's a really fascinating case study because there's an example of the swimming pool. It's like, well, hang on a second. It wasn't really, we weren't meant to put ordinals or NFTs, for those who aren't familiar with it, on Bitcoin. Now, there's a divide within the Bitcoin community about these ordinals. Some say, how dare you put a picture on a Satoshi? How dare you do that? It wasn't meant for that. How dare you skate in a swimming pool?
How dare you tattoo Satoshi?
But
heretic.
And I see two sides to the argument. One side is, well, hang on a second, the vision was to do it for this, and then people are coming along and doing that. But again, I'm a big believer in the free market, and I'm a big believer in the market discovering where it needs to be. And ultimately, what we've found, some people will say, well, Bitcoin can't do anything. It's slow, it's useless, there's nothing you can do with it. Well, ordinals, in fact, prove that there is something you can do with it. That is, you can at least inscribe something on it, whether it's a picture or a message. You can put something on this Satoshi and have an NFT or an empty one. Now, is that good or bad? The market will find out. The Bitcoin maxis will say, no, it's slowing it up and it's not what it was meant for. But again, I'm a big believer in the free market and these things finding where they're meant to be. So if you also look at Satoshis, back in, I think it's around 2017 or 2018, virgin Bitcoins were a lot more valuable than used Bitcoins. And the reason is because what some of the federal agencies were doing was that they would say, as an example, HODL, we found that you've got...
And those are the mined Bitcoins. Those
Correct,
are the ones that the genesis from the pools paid out. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's because if we found that HODL had, and picking on you, HODL, because you're fun, we found that HODL was holding a Bitcoin that was used through money laundering somewhere else. Well, the police or investigators could come in and say, HODL, even though you weren't part of this, that Bitcoin was, so we're confiscating that Bitcoin. And therefore we had this kind of subdivided market of Bitcoins that may or may not have been used for bad stuff versus...
And early on, they really were used for a lot of bad stuff.
Yep. Yeah,
as being honest.
As the US dollar was, it is as well, and many, and even gold to an extent. And the example I give is it's really not fair, because if grandma goes to the shop and she buys a loaf of bread with cash, and she comes out with the change from the cashier, and the police say, freeze, hands up, and they pin it to the ground, and they say, you're holding a $20 note that was used in a drug raid last year. You know, poor old grandma goes, I don't know, I just bought bread. I don't know.
Well, Bitcoin gets in trouble because it's transparent, right? And even Ethereum even more so, I think. But you can really see on the chain what's going on, not necessarily who holds it. So that part of it is obfuscated. But the actual action and where, you know, if you're a good chain analyst and you can kind of figure out how much or where, or, you know, especially if they put stuff into centralized exchanges and everything, it's traceable. So it's easy to put the label of Bitcoin, you know, this was more done back in the early days of just being a coin for criminals or a crypto for criminals. But that's because it's transparent. It doesn't mean everything else isn't the same way. You just can't necessarily see it.
Yeah, and the irony of that is that's what actually makes it less attractive to criminals. The money of choice for criminal activity isn't Bitcoin. You don't want fingers on keyboards. You want, in fact, a sort of silent or invisible money, which is in fact the US dollar in cash, or any money in cash. But the US dollar is very, of course, liquid. You can use it in most places, and most people are happy to accept it. But when big crimes are committed, it's typically not done with Bitcoin now. Sure, it was in the early days because there was ignorance involved and we didn't really know what this technology was. It's really done in bundles of US dollars in cash. But I sort of close with this. We now have these sort of three markets of Bitcoin. You've got the virgin Bitcoins, then you've got the Bitcoins that are out there that have nothing on them, and then you have Bitcoins that have an ordinal on it. And I'm genuinely wondering, well, which one's going to be worth more? And I say, well, who cares? It's what the market decides. If the market decides that they all have the same value, cool. But if the market decides a virgin Bitcoin is more valuable than a used Bitcoin, which is less valuable than an ordinal, which is a word I've just made up, Bitcoin, then so be it. That's what the market decides.
Good one. All right, here we go. Sammy, do you want to chime in there before we go to the ETF question?
No, that was very interesting actually. I wasn't aware that, you know, if you bought Bitcoin that was seized, that they could actually track you down once you take ownership. I mean, that's actually interesting to me. I didn't even know they could do that. But yeah, that's another problem with I suppose this whole CBDC thing, people tracking you and wanting to know everything about you. I mean, it's the same. I think if they can track you for using confiscated Bitcoin, it really takes that privacy away, doesn't it?
I think the scarcity of... Sorry, Adam.
Oh, I was going to say, well, then you have privacy coins such as XMR. Like Monero is the true privacy coin. And the example in Australia is you used to be able to buy XMR, a privacy coin, on CoinSpot and Australian exchanges. And I predicted that they will ban this, they will stop it. And they absolutely did. The government came in and said, you can hold XMR, but you can't buy and sell it in Australia. And it's for that reason. It's truly untraceable. But it doesn't really matter because the technology is out there. It's like saying, well, you can't use a VPN. Well, story time with Uncle Adam. What would an interview be without a story time? When I lived in China, stayed in China, I lived in Asia for nearly 2 years. But I remember going to China, and Facebook was banned in China, and is banned in China. And I was in a bar, and my Chinese mate is on Facebook. And I said, dude, what are you doing? Isn't that illegal here? And he goes, yeah, absolutely. I said, but how can you use it? He goes, just use a VPN. So even if you look at a very totalitarian state such as China, and they ban a certain website, people are still going to use it. Now, whether that's wrong or right or legal or immoral, that's for a different argument. The fact is that the truth is in the markets, and even if things are banned, it will still be used. And the same is with XMR. It's not completely banned, but people will still use it. And I think Evan Floyd out there has referred to, using his XMR. When XMR was banned on exchanges here, I personally dumped all my XMR. Not because I had any issue with it, but just because I'm in front of the camera, I've got enough money, I didn't want any heat, so I just let it go.
I mean, what's going to happen with these Mt. Gox coins? Isn't there 8 billion BTC that are coming out? Or do they sort of slow trickle them out? Are you worried about like a dump when they do come out?
Definitely not 8 billion. The supply of Bitcoin's 21 million. But when they do come out, the question is, so when the coins from Mt. Gox come out and when they are released, the question is, will they be dumped immediately? And I would suggest those got into Bitcoin very easy. Sure, some are going to take some money and they're going to take some profits and they're going to go, sweet, I'm going to go get that Lambo, I'm going to go on the holiday. But I think others in there may not even know they've got it. They may not cash it out. They may be dead, as grim as that may sound. They may have lost their keys, or they may hold it. So there is a belief, an argument, shall we say, that the second that those coins from Mt. Gox is released, it's going to crash the entire Bitcoin market and it's all going to fall to pieces. I don't share that belief. I think what's going to happen is some people will, in fact, sell some of that Bitcoin and go on their holiday and get a Lambo. Some people won't even know that they've got it, or they'll be deceased or have no access to it. And I think some people will hold that Bitcoin. So I think if it did come out very quickly, you may see a bit of a dip. But there's too many buy orders out there, and you can actually see that on the book. You can see how many buy orders there are on the books, that as soon as it gets to a certain point, it's just scooped up very quickly. I, along with many other people, have buy orders on Bitcoin, and the second it hits that price, it's just scooped up. And as a result, it creates a bit of a safety net for the price of Bitcoin. But ultimately, when it comes to crypto, as I always say, anything can happen.
I want to say something about that real quick.
Yeah, sure.
I used to be on that, and most of the people, well, all of them on there were constantly trading. We're talking about the Mt. Gox payout, right? Yeah. Judging from the chats and what they did all day with that crypto, none of them really held that much, or they wouldn't be on there. And there are going to be exceptions. I do think it will dump, but I think a lot of them will end up putting into other crypto because they hedged every single second of every day. And that was before there were really big fees, or even, depending on where they were at, taxes. So it might end up being that some of that Bitcoin money gets bridged over to other chains. more so than people would think, because these were hedgers. They did that on that site forever. They weren't on there to exchange to cash or to hold. They were on there, okay, Feathercoin, I'm going to get this, Ruble, going to get this, what else? Litecoin versus Bitcoin. And these types of people to get that huge bag back, there's definitely a gambly kind of rush to hedging every single day. And if they end up going to those routes, we could get an influx, maybe in Ethereum, right, of some of the money. I mean, I do think it'll dump, but I think some of it will dump into other altcoins as well.
I think Mt. Gox has started, because I did see a mate of mine said that he commented that people are actually starting to receive those Bitcoins back. But I don't know if they got it in Bitcoin. I'm not too sure what went down. I wasn't involved in Mt. Gox. Another thing I wanted to add about the VPN, you see India is banning a whole heap of exchanges and crypto. I mean, why are they doing this, firstly? And also that's the VPN thing. I can see, like, Crypto Rand Man putting up a link to a VPN saying this is for my Indian homies and things like that. What's going on with India right now?
This is on you, Adam. What do you reckon?
Well, what's interesting about, first of all, if we Big Bear's Flight is out there, and Big Bear's Flight, a very powerful member in our crypto community, he in fact has a lot of coins on Mt. Gox, and he could provide us insight to what's happening with the coins on Mt. Gox, because yes, some of them are actually starting to trickle out, and it's not so black and white whether it will be in Bitcoin or, as you said, Sammy, released as an equivalent, as in the cash value. So the big conflict with Mt. Gox at the moment, and it's pretty rotten, is that imagine 10 years ago you buy all this Bitcoin, and then Mt. Gox holds this Bitcoin, and then there's all of these problems, and Mt. Gox comes up with an offer and says, righto, we've got your Bitcoin, we're going to refund your Bitcoin. And all the people go, cool, they're going to give us what the value is. And then Mt. Gox says, no, we're going to give you the value of the coins the day that you paid for it. And it's like, hang on a second. I only bought Bitcoin when it was like $10 or $100 or whatever it was. It's now worth $43,500. Give me my money. And Mt. Gox is like, nah, we'll give you what you paid for them, and we'll keep the Bitcoin. So that's where the huge conflict has come in there.
Shady.
Yeah, really dodgy.
So angry.
Oh,
you know what's sad though is a lot of Bitcoin people, and I love Bitcoin people, but a lot of them will be like, okay, good, this is so it doesn't dump. Like, wait a minute, that's a real centralized, shady way you're acting. Bitcoin is a Bitcoin. It's not a dollar. Give these people back their damn money.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Let nature deal with it.
Yeah, and that's where the lawyers are having this conflict. So I'll defer to our crypto brother Big Bear's Flight to give us insight on that. Now, when we go to India, India is fascinating because the world's biggest population just now has crept over by numbers. Very difficult to get the exact number, but different data sets say that now India's got the world's biggest population. But what it definitely has is the world's greatest growth rate. So China's growth rate slowed right down. No other country really comes close, and India has overtaken. What's interesting about what happened with India recently with the war between Russia and Ukraine, you will say, well, what's that got to do with crypto? It has a lot to do with crypto, because when sanctions were put on Russia, and they said, Russia, you're excluded from the SWIFT network, you can't use the petrodollar to buy and sell oil, and we're putting these sanctions on you. India, which is part of the Commonwealth or the alliance per se, they said, no, we're not going to adhere to that. And Russia said, as an example, who wants half price oil? And India said, yeah, we'll take half price oil. And then what did they pay in? Well, they couldn't pay in the US dollar anymore because they were banned from that. And they couldn't use a SWIFT network because they were banned from that. So what it actually showed the world is that they just bypassed the system and said, all right, America, you do your thing. We're going to get cheap oil. We're not going to use your petrodollar, and we're going to get it at a discount rate. And whether we use the ruble, the rupee, or the yuan, that's up to us. So that was a real lesson to the world to say that the financial and military power, because it's kind of one and the same, it's kind of deeply intertwined, of the United States when it came to putting sanctions on Russia, the game has now changed because India wasn't part of it, and India is supposed to be part of the alliance. But when it came to that, they said, no, we're not going to do that. So now how does this translate into money? Well, when it goes into the financial systems of, this is the CBDC, this is the new Fed coin, this is the new global reserve, How do you enforce that onto everyone else? And we're kind of creeping out of the Mt. Gox situation here. But I've often referred to India as possibly the fulcrum of what's happening on the seesaw of the global stage. Many people are focused on Russia versus China, Russia and China versus America and the Five Eyes. I actually say that the real turning point in the world is India. They've got nukes, they've got money, they've got a big military, they've got an I don't care factor. They're the biggest holder of gold in the world. So the biggest holder of gold in the world is Indian women. If you take all their jewelry and put it together, they've got the most amount of gold. So really, it's fascinating to me to see what will India do in the future of the financial space.
Nice. We're going to interrupt this conversation for this super chat. Guys, I've enabled super chats for fun and money.
Yes.
Evan Floyd has said, "Good day, everyone. Can Adam share the story of the immortal chicken? Adam, you knew this was coming."
Evan saw me roll my eyes when this happened, but it's the free market, and I believe in the free market, so he's paid you, so now I have to tell the story again. Okay, so on the estate, I've got this has nothing to do with crypto, so just sit back and relax as
I'm going to
I
enjoy
give
it.
this to you. All right, so we've got lots of chickens, and one of them, my first chicken, her name is Clucky. Clucky is an Isa brown, and they're only supposed to live about 3 years. When she was about 6, I think, I came out and she was very sick. This chicken was very sick. She wasn't moving, and it was like, okay, I guess her time is up. But I love this chicken. She's number one. She's produced all the chickens on the estate, one way or another. I'll take it to the vet. I take it to the vet. The vet's like, man, this chicken's supposed to live 3 years. It's like 6 years. Put her down. And I'm like, oh, I don't know I can do it. Nah, I have a moral and ethical responsibility to look after anyone who's on the estate. I'll give her a chance. I took this chicken home. She's inside the house. She's under the TV in a crate with a nice little bed. I'm syringe feeding her water, keeping her warm. She's got a little blanket on. The cats are sitting at her looking at this chicken like, what the hell's this chicken doing in my house? A few days later, there's no improvement. So I take her to a different vet to get a different opinion. Second vet, second bill, over $500 now for a chicken, which normally costs about $3. They're like, man, this chicken's too old. Put it down. It's time to let it go. And I'm like, nah, I've got to give her a chance. Can you give me some antibiotics? Took the chicken home, gave her antibiotics, syringe feed her food and water. And one day she started to get better and better and better. And now Clucky lives on and she's in the backyard. This chicken is now like 8 or 9 years old.
I remember seeing the story of Clucky on Twitter. How adorable.
Yeah, that's Clucky. And she's still laying eggs. It's like a 110-year-old woman giving birth to a living child.
Wow.
It's still happening. And she's
Aubrey de Grey, you hear this? You got a chicken you got to look up on.
She's number one on the estate. No one messes with Clucky. No one. And even Dobie, my Doberman, if you look on my Twitter page, there's a picture of Clucky standing on one of my driveways, and Dobie is behind her. And I asked everyone, I said, add caption. And the best caption I got was, no one clucks with Clucky. And that was basically Dobie looking over this chicken. So thank you, Evan Floyd. And if you haven't seen Evan Floyd's work, please do follow him on Twitter because he's a very deep thinker. And I was on his X Spaces yesterday and a very good audience. So thank you, Evan, for doing that to me yet again. Except this time
Thanks, Evan. That was a really cool story. So Adam, how much time have you got so I can time what I've got left with my question? Oh, that's so generous of you because I have about 5 questions left. All right, here's the next one. Chat, I'm sorry I'm ignoring you a bit, but Adam's good to talk to, and I will pull up comments if I see them there and that I like. I do like them all, but you know what I'm trying to say. So what is your opinion, Adam, on the pending BTC ETF approval? In particular, why is the SEC trying to make it cash in, cash out?
So what we see is first they hate us. So what is it? First they ignore us, then they laugh at us, then they hate us, then they fight us, then they join us. Bitcoin or crypto, let's step back a little bit. Crypto has proven itself as a financial tool on the global stage. There is no getting out of this now. The idea is released, the concept's out there, the technology is there. It's happening. When it comes to the ETF, the first part is, as I mentioned before, traditional financial systems use the tools of traditional financial systems to exploit and profit off of broken money that is fiat. Part of these tools are ETFs, futures markets, banks, to an extent, insurance companies. That's a bit of a gray area. But there's a lot of financial tools, i.e. systems and companies, that make a lot of money off the old financial system. Now that the new financial system is in, whether it's my coin or your coin, that's irrelevant. The new financial system is here. What's happening now is that the old Wall Street boys are coming in and saying, well, hang on a second, we ignored this, then we laughed at it, then we fought it. It's now time to join it. So some people say this is evil, don't let them in, they're going to break Bitcoin. But it goes back to my first principle. I'm very big on first principles. And one of my first principles is the freedom of the market. And whether we like BlackRock or not, or the big financial institutions, I have to practice what I preach. And what I preach is, if you want to buy this or not buy it, that's your choice. I can't come in and say, no, you're too big, you can't buy it. That doesn't work that way. It has to be one set of rules for everyone. The set of rules is, if you want to buy it or sell it or hold it, you can. If they want to do it, they can. Permissionless, which I think we'll touch on a little bit later. The issue, of course, is when it comes into with BlackRock. There's an argument that BlackRock is going to come in and they're going to ruin Bitcoin. Then we'll go on that in a second. When it comes to the SEC is in a very difficult situation. I don't like the SEC, and I don't think Gary Gensler's in charge, because I think if we remove Gensler from the head of the SEC, do you think the SEC would pivot on its position? I don't think it would. I think the SEC does what the government tells it to do. So although a lot of people give Gensler a hard time, I'm indifferent about the guy, because every organization, every department has a head to it. And he just happens to be the head to the department. If we replace them, I don't think suddenly, if they replaced it with Hodprol, I don't think Hodprol would be in the position where you say, right, we're pivoting on our position. We're going to allow the ETF to.
Oh no, Hodprol would pivot. Hodprol would pivot for sure.
Yeah,
She's got
They wouldn't pick Hodprol to be the
exactly.
head of that.
That's the point, Hodprol. That's the point. And if they did pick you and they found out that you had lied on your application, that they would sack you. So now we say, well, why is the SEC doing what it's doing? And the answer is because America needs to hold on to its power to print money and all the financial tools that are addicted to this drug of free money. But the issue now for the United States, and by extent the SEC, is that the rest of the world is not waiting. The rest of the world is moving forward. And we can see it. Russia and Ukraine was a very good example of the powers of the sanction in the past don't have the same power of today, and particularly in the future. Then when we extrapolate that out into the financial systems, whether it's a SWIFT network or a bank or an exchange, you can see that these old powers are diminishing. So on one hand, you have the American government is saying, oh, hang on, we have to hold on to this ability to print all the money we want, to buy anything we want. But on the other hand, it's like, well, hang on, we're the land of the free. And if we don't embrace this new technology, we're going to be left behind. And you can really see this debate within America itself. And I'm not picking on America. Any country that was a global reserve would be going through this exact same process. We have the ability to print all the money in the world and do whatever we want. We can bully people through submission or through bombs, through financial sanctions. We can buy our stuff. We can do whatever we want with this magic money that we can print out of thin air. But on the other hand, if we push this thing too far and we try to get too many golden eggs out of the golden goose that is not really real, we're actually going to be left behind, and everyone else is going to do what they're going to do. An example is like the internet. Just because North Korea, a bit of an extreme example, but extreme example gives us extreme contrast. If you look at North Korea and they say, well, we're going to ban the internet. Well, great. But did that progress them? Of course not. It left them even further behind in the global stage. And now you can see it's kind of inverted when we have the internet of value, the internet of money. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, what was very interesting when I lived in America, it was 10 years in the future when I first went there. But some things were so backwards, like checkbooks. I think they're still using checkbooks. It's so caveman, but it's an example of you've got this global leader in a financial space that is still addicted to these old primitive tools. Now, a checkbook is just a very basic example, but when you extrapolate that into the macro, you can see that when it comes to futures markets, spot markets, if they can't print and control it like they could in the past, what do? So ultimately, this has to be approved. It has to be approved, whether it's this round or next round. America has no choice, because if they don't adopt this technology, they'll be left behind. Just as if any country doesn't adopt the internet, they too will be left behind. Same with vehicles, same with planes, same with electricity, same with medical science. Just because you hate who invented it, or just because you hate that you can't control it, doesn't mean that you have the right or the ability to ignore it. I'll close off this big rant with this. Jason Lowry, a Space Force commander, I think it's Lowry, United States military officer, He wrote a book on this. He wrote a book on America doesn't actually. So an American military officer who's recently been promoted from captain to major. His book was banned by America. Very, very fascinating case study. So an American military officer wrote a book on why you can't turn your back on Bitcoin. Essentially, that book was shut down by American government, which is questionable in itself, the land of the free, banning information. But then that officer was promoted. So what it showed to me was he had great insight to what's happening with this future money. And they didn't put him in jail from it. They, in fact, said, look, you can't talk about it, classified information, even though it's pretty out there, but we're going to promote you anyway. So ultimately, it's kind of like war. If I'm addicted to a bow and arrow and throwing rocks, but my adversary has gunpowder and missiles, I can't die in the ditch, and well, I will die in the ditch, by saying, no, I don't believe in gunpowder, I don't believe in missiles, I'm sticking to bow and arrows and rocks. I have no choice. If my adversary is using this money, this power, this weapon, this method, then I have to adopt it too, and that's what's happening with Bitcoin.
Well said, Adam. I mean, Hong Kong, they're going to be able to, I think their government is pushing for, like, you can actually switch into Bitcoin, like actual Bitcoin, like your ETF Bitcoin is transferable for actual Bitcoin. Is that what the holdup is? This kind of like to and fro on where, you know, on how degen is traditional finance going to be? Are they going to actually allow it to be traded for actual Bitcoin, or is the ETF going to be traded in and out of cash? Like, is there still ongoing discrepancies or fights going on that's stopping the approval, or is it just a time thing now and we're just waiting?
Okay, so you've already got futures markets where you're basically betting on the price of it. A futures market it's a paper market where you're saying, I think this thing, and it doesn't have to be Bitcoin, it can be wheat or oil or gold or this hex glass here. It can be anything. I think in the future it's going to be this price. I'm going to long it or short it. That's a futures market or a papers market. A spot market is you actually have to buy the thing, whether it's oil or glasses or Bitcoin. You actually have to buy it. So in a spot market, yeah, technically you say, well, you've got my Bitcoin, you've got the Bitcoin, you've got my money. I want to flip it and I want to liquidate that asset. Ultimately, what you can see in the rest of the world, there have been spot-backed ETFs that have been approved globally in many markets all around the world. We focus on America, though, because America is the center of gravity when it comes to the financial markets, and they've got the most amount of money. The delay isn't about those technicalities that you described. The delay is really, as I described, it's like, man, what are we going to do? We're losing control of all these markets we've been able to manipulate and control, and these tools to these broken financial systems in the past. Because here's the real thing, in my opinion. Ultimately, once the SEC approves a Bitcoin spot-backed ETF, it legitimizes BTC. That's the message it gives to the world. It says, you know what, this is a legitimate product. We've now approved it. So what does that do to the rest of the market? Well, people will be investing into Bitcoin, whether they know it or not. So for us Australians, we have superannuation funds. In America, you have 401k funds. In England, you have pension funds. It's all the same thing. You're really putting money away for your retirement. You give your money to these centralized bodies, and those centralized bodies take that money and they invest it in many things. They invested in oil and farming and biomedical and even cigarettes. Many people don't know that their pension funds are invested in cigarette companies. Now, I don't like cigarettes and I don't want to invest in that, but maybe somewhere my pension fund is invested in, I think it's Philip Morris. I think that's the name of the biggest tobacco company in the world, because they give a good return. Well, the same thing will happen when a spot-backed Bitcoin ETF is approved. People who don't like Bitcoin, people who don't know Bitcoin, people who don't want anything to do with Bitcoin, their money by default will go from these big pension funds and go into these spot-backed ETFs. Now, what does that mean? That means there is a tsunami of liquidity and money that is about to pour into these markets. And even if we don't like Bitcoin, it doesn't matter. A rising tide lifts all ships. So as you mentioned before, Claz, at the beginning of this, we want Bitcoin to be healthy because we all win when Bitcoin's healthy. Everyone will win when this comes in because it's all going to go up. Ultimately, America has to make the decision. How long are you going to delay this? It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Nice one. And thank you, Jacob Buse, for your Canadian $10. Cheers to you, my friend. I got my 0 sugar iced tea here. David James approved. I'm not getting paid for that.
Let's see, Max.
I have a
Nice.
Red Bull here.
Very nice.
So
Drink
there's
brain
about
there.
what 12 ETFs waiting on the SEC's desk for approval, and are they all spot
Yes.
Bitcoin ETFs?
Yeah.
All
Yes.
of them. So that's
Yep.
definitely good for Bitcoin. They're all good for Bitcoin, obviously.
Yeah, because once they're approved, they need the Bitcoin. So remember, futures is you're just betting on an idea on a price. But if you have
Yeah.
a spot-backed ETF, an exchange-traded fund, you actually need the asset. So and it's a really good question, Sammy, because let me expand on that a little bit. What we're asking in the crypto land at the moment is if and when it's approved, will they approve one? Will they do it in phases, or will they do it all at once? So there's three main outcomes. One, they'll say no, it's not going to be approved. We're digging our heels in. That's one outcome. The second outcome is it will be approved and it will be phased. They say, right, ARK, you were first. BlackRock, you're the biggest, so you're next. Valkyrie, you get to go next, and that will be a phased approach. The third outcome is that it will be approved, and I say, right, you're all good to go. And then when that happens, it's a very interesting situation. So there's a lot of game theory around this, because what do you do as one of these fund managers? Do you say, well, I'll sit back and wait? Well, if you wait too long, the market will run away, and now you've got to buy this Bitcoin at a much higher price.
What do you think is the probability of the latter scenario where it's just all go?
Great question. I actually think
would
that's
think it's
more
low.
I think it's more probable, because I think if they do it phased, noting how litigious the United States is, I think the SEC would face multiple lawsuits, because the argument would be, and it's just thought experiments here, so I don't know. I'm just hypothesizing.
Yeah, but just
So imagine you're Valkyrie, right? And they give it to ARK first, and ARK front runs the market and gets all of the Bitcoin, not all, but a lot of the Bitcoin really cheap. And by the time Valkyrie or Bitwise or BlackRock gets in, now the Bitcoin is double, for argument's sake. They're going to be really pissed off, and they're going to say, well, hang on a second. Whilst you were stuffing around with the admin paper, the market has run away from us. So now the SEC has to actually say, well, if we approve it, who do we approve it to first? And if they phase it in, I reckon they're going to get sued. Even if the case comes to nothing. Remember, we're not talking about mum and dad here. You're talking about multi-billion-dollar, in some instances, multi-trillion-dollar companies that have more legal power than the SEC. Now, arguably,
they got all the lawyers.
That's right. The SEC has a lot of money because they've got the money printed behind them. But the free market, the commercial market, they've got the best lawyers. So, I mean, look at XRP. Ripple was a really good example of you had an entity, a company, taking on the United States government, or the other way around. And it showed us all. Even I'm not a big fan of Ripple, but I was certainly rooting for Ripple because they were representing all of us in the crypto land. And you had the United States government taking on an entity. And most times those entities will submit because it's like, man, I can't afford to take on the US government, but Ripple could. Ripple could, and they kicked ass. So we should all, even if we don't like Ripple, we should be very grateful for what Ripple did because they created precedent. The next precedent is what's going to happen with the ETF.
I mean, I respect Charles Hoskinson for trying to wear some shirts that are a little more outrageous of late. And I saw him get angry this one time, which I don't think he usually gets angry. I don't follow him that closely. And yeah, I'm getting confused between XRP and ADA now. But anyway, I just gave Charles Hoskinson like a great little rap there.
I believe I read that the SEC are still trying to appeal that decision.
Oh, they will. Yeah, absolutely. Because they've got nothing to lose. Because it's not their money. And it's kind of the standard practice. I'm not a lawyer, but you can look at case law. It's very black and white in the sense that typically when you lose a case, you put an appeal. I mean, even look at scam, bankrupt, fraud. You lose and then you put an appeal because there's nothing besides money. There's nothing to lose from an appeal. But noting that the SEC, it's not really their money. Now you might say, well, they've got budgets. Yeah, but they're linked to the US government. And do they have a budget? Well, we'll just print more money. So why wouldn't they appeal? They will absolutely appeal. But this is the beauty of the United States and in fact your Constitution and your Bill of Rights and the way the forefounders created this wonderful system is that they in fact, if you look at the Bill of Rights and the Constitution of the United States, the reality was that was a decentralized model. What they did, the forefounders of the United States, was that they decentralized the power. They gave a certain amount of power to the Congress and to the states and to the governors and to the people and the Bill of Rights. And all that is, in simple terms, is the decentralization of power. Now, at the other end, you have communism. Communism is the centralization of power. Now, no system is perfect. Democracy has a lot of gaps in what it does. But ultimately, which one prospers more? Socialist communist states or capitalistic free states? And no matter how much emotion we put into it, the numbers don't lie. We remove the qualitative data and look at the quantitative data, and the quantitative data shows, for all the downfalls of democracy and crony capitalism, capitalistic democratic societies prosper way more than centralized socialist communist societies. What we're doing in crypto, all of us as one, is we're applying the principles of decentralized power to money.
Nice one. I'd just like to give a shout out to XRP founders. I found them here, Chris Larson and Jed McCaleb. Quite good looking roosters. I don't know if you can see there on the screen. And one looks like a younger version of the other, which sometimes I find it curious, like, anyway, the relationship to how people look to each other when they're closely connected. But in any case, we might go on to our next question. So this is about Hex now, Adam. A little bit about Hex. So we're gonna shield to you now. So Hex's utility is permissionless yield by the staking mechanism. Professor Lamont Black, skeptic in the highest of stakes documentary, is now understanding the value of Hex. Do you see the value proposition in Hex staking?
Yeah, so I see the value proposition in all staking. You lock up a return, you delay gratification, and you get a return for it. Ultimately, though, and I have a lot of, so I'm not a Hexican, I'm not a Bitcoin maxi, I'm an economist and investor and a crypto enthusiast. But I did a lot of work on Hex. As I said, I did a deep dive into Hex when it was called Bitcoin Hex. I've interviewed Richard Hart 3 times. And many people come to me as the Hex expert. And I push back and I say, no, go to the Hex community because they know better than me. They've got much more insight. And I have invested heavily into Hex. But it comes down to this. And this is going to trigger some people. Okay. Even if I give you an 8,000% APY, if what I'm giving you an APY and an annual percentage yield, a return, an interest rate, and something for locking up something, and I'm earning all of these coins, that's great. But if the value of the coins are constantly going down, then your principal is going down, so you're way behind, and what you're earning is going down. And you say, yeah, but I'm getting more and more of what I've locked up. And that is true. Mathematically, that is true. But ultimately, what will create value for any coin, and I'm not talking about Hex here at all, I'm talking about all coins, what creates real value is adoption. Now, where the challenge for Hex, and I've said this publicly in my deep dives, and I'll say it again, the challenge for Hex is that it's so divisive. And I think all Hexicans will agree with this. You either, it's like Vegemite. The example I give is in Australia. You either love it or you hate it. There's kind of no middle ground for it. What's interesting though with Hex is like when it first came out, no one really understood it. And when I first saw it, I'm like, hang on, I think there's something to this, which is why I did a lot of research into it. And it's actually quite difficult to grasp the concept of it initially compared to other coins. Once it actually started to launch and do quite well, then new people came in because they were very curious about it, because it's like, oh, hang on a second, these people are getting rich off it. How do I learn about it? Then they realize that the community is so strong and so intelligent, and you have this deeply connected and intertwined, and I really mean this not as lip service, but immensely intelligent community who love this coin and love this concept. But then you've got the other end, outside of the community. They hate Hex with a passion. They hate Richard Hart. They hate everything about the community. And it's important to identify this, because what's important about anything going up, whether it's your coin or my coin, is adoption. And why do we need adoption? Because what adoption does is it brings in new money. So the challenge for all of crypto at the moment is it needs new money. Because when new money comes in, and that's what the ETF is very interesting, is you're going to have this tsunami of new liquidity, new cash pouring into the space. When it comes to those who are outside the Hex community, when they come in, and you really have to do the thought experiments here. So they come in and they look at Hex and they go, well, hang on, they look at crypto. So they don't even know Hex. They've heard of this Bitcoin thing. They've heard of this Ethereum thing. And then they come into crypto and they see there's 26,000 cryptocurrencies out there. And everyone says my cryptocurrency is the best. But then they go to the Hex thing and say, oh, this is good. And they have this really strong community that says, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's 40% APY. It's got a better back end. It's got a great community. It's got better technology, better decentralized, your keys, your coin. You can't stop it. Go Hex. Cool. But then you've got the other end that says, this is the biggest scam in the world. It's not really even his name. They're taking him to court. Hexicans don't know what they're talking about. They've split it now into two. It's confusing. There's E-Hex, there's P-Hex. It's too confusing. So, and both sides are kind of true. Like, it's not his name, but it's taken to court. It is two coins. It is a bit confusing. So as the investor, you must put that your paradigm, or temporarily, in that to the investor. The new money that comes in, the corporations, the institutions, the mums, the dads. If you're a deep thinker and very philosophical and open and intelligent, you understand the power of Hex. You understand the possibility. But if you're, dare I say, the masses who don't think so deeply, who won't do the time, who don't question the narrative, who don't look into it deeper, they'll just be like, I'll just get Bitcoin Cash because it's cheaper than Bitcoin, and I like Bitcoin because it's big. So the real challenge for all of us at the moment is getting new money into the space. That's any entity, whether it's real or any market, whether it's real estate or gold or futures, it doesn't matter. You need more money in for the price to go up. That's step one. Step two, when that money comes in, where is it going to go into crypto? Is it going to go into this coin, that coin, their coin, or my own coin? And that's what we don't know yet. But what I would suggest, and many Hexicans, because I've spoken to a lot of Hexicans and I've been on their channel a lot of people say, and it's for all of us, interest rates are high, we've gone through runs, our bags are dry, we've got no more dry powder to put into these markets. Now, some people do, but some people don't. So at the moment, where is the new liquidity, not just for Hex, but for everyone going to come from? And you can see, I'll give Axie Infinity as an example. So nothing to do with this coin. Axie Infinity had APY, I think it was 78% at one stage, about 80% annual returns. Now, I must admit, I made a lot of money on that very quickly, but that's because I moved in and I moved out very quickly. But when it comes to locking up your stakes, I'm now going to tell you my personal frustration with Hex. This is my personal frustration with it.
I'm listening.
And I say this, and please, to the Hexicans out there, I say this not as a hater, but as an ally, as a neutral party who's done the time in this space, who's done the interviews, who's done the research, and who has put money into the space. But I will challenge, I've got to keep it real, and I'll challenge any coin, including the frustrations with Bitcoin and Ethereum and altcoins. The frustration I have at the moment with Hex, we'll talk about Hex first and then Pulse later, is that when it split, in theory, it made sense because, you went from the E chain to the P chain. But what it's done now is it's created confusion. And I, as an ignorant investor, go to the Hexicans and I say, well, which one's better? And what I've discovered is that there's, in fact, a divide in the community themselves. They say, invest in E. So there's three options. Invest in E-Hex, invest in P-Hex, and invest in both. I said, well, hang on. That's three different answers for the one coin. And that three different... And because I'm deeply into this space, I understand the three different answers, but it's not about me. It's about the market. And so when the market comes in and they're like, there's 26,000 different coins, okay, and then you got Hex, okay, but then you've got three versions of Hex. Buy one, buy the other, or buy both. And that is the challenge that we face at the moment. It's like, man, that creates a lot of confusion. What do we do? Now, this is where people get very passionate. Right now I can hear people will be screaming at me, no, E's better, no, P's better, no, it's both. But that's my point. My point is exactly that. What that did, in my observation and in my opinion, was it actually created, not on purpose, but it actually created a little bit of a divide within the Hex community itself. So then you had this very strong, unified community. But then there was a split. There was a split with no E, no P, no both. I don't know what the answer is, but that's probably my one frustration with it at the moment. The second frustration would be, of course, and we're all going through this, is that, Richard's facing a lawsuit. Now, that's not his fault. That's just the SEC doing what the SEC does. Charles Hoskinson is. Ripple is. Many people are. So there's this scattergun approach of lots of coins are facing a legal suit. Now, whether it's right or wrong, good or bad, he'll win or not, that doesn't matter. What matters is when the tsunami of money comes in and the retail investor or the institutional investor comes in and says, do you want to buy this coin that has three different versions, sort of, two different versions, but three different options, and the founder is not using his name, and the founder is going to a court case? Or do you want to use that coin that there's one version of, there is no court case against them, and it's got 50% market share? in my opinion, looking at the mind of the investor may be more inclined to go with the less risky one. But then you have another group of investors that say, no, give me the 6 returns. I want a 10,000x. So they'll put it in there. It's a long way of saying that in crypto, anything can happen. And I'm genuinely interested as an investor, as a crypto enthusiast, as an economist. What's going to happen to this? What's going to happen in the future?
Thanks, Adam.
Yeah.
I'll try to address. There's a lot to unpack, but I'll try to. So first of all, just for anyone that doesn't know, what is HEX? HEX is the first blockchain certificate of deposit. So it's designed to give people permissionless yield. So if you choose to lock it up, then you're the only one that earns yield. So HEX inflates at 3.69% per year, and that yield is only shared amongst the stakers. You can choose to have it liquid or you can stake it. And if you stake it, then you give up your chance to sell it whenever you want, but you get the yield. So there's like a value transfer from the people that are liquid, because all of that inflation is getting paid out to stakers, but the liquid people can dump or sell whenever they want. So that's the contract. And it's actually, there's a lot of maths and genius in the contract, because if you try to make a stake like later on in the future, you'll always get a worse deal. So if you stake early and longer and bigger, you always get a better deal. So there's a lot of maths involved, and the contract itself is quite genius. So PulseChain is a fork of Ethereum because Ethereum gas fees were too high. So there is HEX that is on Ethereum still, the old school traditional HEX. And then when Richard Hart forked Ethereum for PulseChain, now we have the HEX that is on PulseChain, and we all call it P-HEX. And then people, shall we just ditch this old HEX that's on Ethereum, which did a 10,000x and which brought us all here together? Do we ditch it and just stick to this new one and hope that it does a 10,000x? And that's the question. And most people in the HEX community are sort of trending towards that kind of answer. They're not giving up on the HEX on Ethereum because they have big stakes over there. And there's a lot of people with big money and big stakes over there. So we're not giving up on it. But we have this new HEX and we're hoping that it also does a 10,000x on PulseChain. So that's the essence of HEX. I mean, the HEX contract is paid out in HEX terms. So if the HEX price takes a dump, then all of that yield's not going to be worth much. And conversely, if the HEX price is going gangbusters, then your yield is also worth a lot of money. So just to address a few of your concerns, in terms of adoption, every crypto, I suppose, needs outside adoption. And what do people care about? They don't really care about anything except price go up, right? They care about the green candles. So last cycle, HEX did a 10,000x. And what got most people there was not the fact that there's a lot of controversy and it's confusing, but the fact that they just saw the green candles and they just figured out a way to buy it. And then the price just went up. So we've done it before, despite being heavily gatekept and hated. So despite the heavy gatekeeping, despite being hated, people saw those green candles and they all just found a way to buy it. So for me, in terms of adoption and trying to get another 10,000x on a Richard Hart product that is also called HEX on a different chain, that's kind of like a no-brainer for me, which is why the majority of my own personal crypto portfolio is wrapped up in PulseChain and HEX, because you've got a founder that's done it before. HEX has got flawless uptime. It didn't have to get rolled back like BTC in 2010 when that guy just printed like billions of BTC. So it's very secure, and it's a fork of Ethereum, so you can build on top of it. So it has features. And that's essentially my take on the whole thing. The whales in HEX and PulseChain are taking a seat back at the moment. Why are they taking a seat back? Because they want to see Richard Hart do a live stream. They want to see the outcome or what's going to happen with this SEC case. So they have taken a back seat for the moment. The discovery hearing for the SEC case is in January. And I would like that to be the opportunity where we hear from Richard's legal team what he's going to bring to the table, and we get an idea as a community of where we're heading in that regard, and also then Richard's actions after the case. So from a personal perspective, let's face it, HEX has always been a founder coin. Richard Hart does 8-hour live streams. He was there. He was immersed in the community. We had the SEC accusations and he took a break. Do I blame him for taking a break? No. Who wouldn't take a break after all of that? After the SEC case, and also timing of the cycle, right? We haven't even hit the halvening. He also might be timing it a little bit. Let's see what happens around between January and April, but more importantly, after April or after the halvening in terms of Richard's presence. So the two things at the moment holding the community back just slightly would be the SEC case and the fact that Richard's not doing live streams. But hey, let's face it, when the green candles come later, no one's going to care.
True. Absolutely. Plus the delisting of Hex off Uniswap. And also I think OKX, I don't know where else we'll delist it, but I mean, we're still heavily gatekept. And if these products can do what they did last time with so much hate and, you know, being ranked at 201 on CoinMarketCap, all that rubbish that we went up with through in the last cycle, then, you know, it would be amazing to see it be successful, you know, because Hex is like the Sid and Nancy of the crypto world. So many people hate hexagons and Richie Hart. I think it's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's like being like the underdog. It's like, what is your narrative? It's like we're the underdog and then we end up winning. It's like,
Well,
I kind of like it. I don't know. I don't mind that narrative.
I know we have questions and stuff, but I want to say something real quick. I guess as a Hexican and coming from somebody who has chosen, I guess, the pulse chain really over maybe degenning or even more solid prospects at the moment, like, you know, Bitcoin and even Ethereum and whatnot, is I know when it comes to the complication of these new Richard Hart tokens, and it's several, it's EHEX, PHEX, and we have Pulse, PulseX, and Inc. when you also include the PulseChain farms, and that, you know, further exacerbates the complexity of that has been introduced to this ecosystem. It isn't really designed for a mooning, and you could argue that it's designed to maybe be stagnant for a while or even go down in the face of centralization. We're introducing things to normies, relative normies that haven't seen it before. These IPFS links, things such as Uniswap and, you know, even PulseX being, you know, also a decentralized, a DeFi trading platform, Inc. being the incentive token to these farms. All of these things are very new to people who are used to buying crypto, let's say on Venmo, you know, or even Coinbase or all these centralized exchanges, or they're used to coming in and putting fiat, getting a crypto and waiting for it to go up because they're coming in as investors. But the original point of cryptocurrency, in my opinion, is to have it decentralized. And so what's happening now, PulseChain is a necessary evil to Ethereum gas fees.
Mm-hmm.
If you're an investor, I think there are pluses and minuses to EX and PHEX. One of being people might get out of EHEX more, and you might get a bigger payout later if you're in the staking class. So if you stake, it depends on the behavior of everybody else, whether they, you know, emergency end stake, you end up getting the bigger payout, whatnot. PulseChain with the smaller gas is just supposed to make it not painful to deal with, not painful to stake, unstake, you know, that the throughput on the chain isn't such that you can't, you know, interact on it. I kind of knew that it would cause chaos and maybe a price drop because it's just too much to handle at once. Not everybody has all day to go through and read these white papers and see what they should get into, whatnot, let alone Inc. and PulseX and everything that have really been paused. And that's why I said pause with the SEC, you know, when it comes to Hexaco, where a lot of these things have had to been put on the wayside in order to wait for this to come to fruition, you know, in order to move forward. But it's a setup for decentralization that's more simple and safer for people. So really, the way I see it with Hex is, yeah, you do need more adoption to keep the price up. That's absolutely true. But it's not really meant to be a moon token. It's meant to make you some return if it keeps its price. And if it goes into a bear with emergency end stakes, it possibly could pay yield back. That holding a token that isn't staked you wouldn't have that variable. So if you're looking for a token to just moon or get adoption and always go up, that's not really what the fork was for. It's kind of a long-term investment system, if you're willing to put it like that. It's more like, do you believe in the freedom of cryptocurrency rather than looking for a specific X up? And so I'm in it personally for a very long time, and I am not a Richard Hart maxi. I am a big fan of Monero. Actually, was mining it, was doing a terrible job mining it for a little while. Ethereum, I still have stuff on Ethereum too, but with PulseChain, it's really trying to bring back decentralization in the eyes of fans of crypto. And I think that's why a lot of people that fully understand what Richard Hart's trying to do and what hexagons are trying to do, that's kind of their goal. And that's why I'm a hexagon. That's the number one reason why.
I think we are like about true DeFi. Like what sets apart a hexagon and pulsecon from other crypto communities is the fact that we self-custody our keys. The majority of people self-custody our keys. So when you talk about problems with Celsius, BlockFi, FTX, we were not affected by any of this because we don't keep anything on centralized exchanges. So we're very censorship resistant. We don't really have to worry if a front end goes down or if an exchange gets busted or liquidated or whatever the case is. We've skipped, we've just dodged so many bullets just by being true DeFi.
But it is a very awkward feeling middle ground in between people understanding it and not. It really feels like a step backward, but it structurally is not.
I mean, if you look at we are gaining adoption. So if you look at B Roots on Banter, he called PulseChain the most undervalued layer one. We got a nice little green candle out of that. So thanks B Roots for that. JP Morgan has mentioned PulseChain when referring to the resurgence of DeFi. So what is the next narrative of the bull run? Like what is going to make people those X's that they want? Nobody knows the answer to that question. Is true DeFi going to be the answer? It could very well be. Is an SEC case going to stop it? No, I strongly believe it will not.
Yeah.
So we're back to you, Adam. So I don't know if we've been able to convince you. Do you have any further questions about Hex or PulseChain before we ask our DGen altcoin question? And then we'll wrap it up with our final question.
No questions. But you both illustrate the different, and all communities do this. So we talk about Bitcoin. You have the Bitcoin maxis who believe Bitcoin should be this, and others say it should be that. And within communities, you can see that there's different beliefs of what a coin should be. So, Claz, you were talking about you believe this could do a 10,000x and it's going to give you a big return. Hodpod, you say you're not here for that, and that's what I say. There is a division within all communities everywhere, and for the new people coming in, it just adds even more confusion to it. We get it because we live in this space, and when I really wasn't giving lip service to the Hex community when I talk about this high level of thinking. This details that you went to, even you, Claz, there where you're explaining exactly what it is to outsiders who don't have any financial literacy, who have no crypto literacy. Everything that you just said, as true and accurate and articulate and beautiful as it was, would just mean absolutely nothing to these people. They'd be like, what the hell did she just say? And this is the challenge for all of us in crypto. You've got all the outsiders who need to come into crypto. So that's the first challenge. And then the second challenge is for all of us, well, why my coin? And then the third challenge within Hex, it's like, well, hang on, we were just intertwining Hex and Pulse, which are two completely different things. We get it because we live in this space and we understand it. So it's a challenge for all of us. And when it comes to Pulse, I think, I sacrificed heavily for Pulse. And it really comes back to adoption. I think it's a great product. I think it makes perfect sense And it's so rock and roll what Richie did. He goes, well, hang on, I don't like what you're doing, so I'll just build my own. And that's the way you should approach life. If you don't like what that company is doing, just make your own company and do it the way you want to do. And hats off to Richard for doing that. And although there's a huge scream that there's so much development on Pulse, that may or may not be true, but the majority of development, whether we like it or not, is on Ethereum. And I agree entirely that the fees should be cheaper on, and will be and are cheaper on Pulse. But then you've got another competitor. You've got Solana, then you've got Cardano, then you've got Polkadot. So when we look at the smart contract race, what I do as an investor, what I do is I just hedge my bets. So I put myself in a position where I can't lose. Now, if crypto loses, I've lost all of that, but then I've got a lot of real estate and I've got a lot of gold and I've got a lot of other investments. So I diversify within diversification. What's concerning to me is in any crypto is when people say, nah, that's my only coin, I'm going all in on that. And I'm like, why? Like, why would you do that? There are so many opportunities out there to make stupid amounts of money. Why not diversify your risk and diversify your opportunity? Because when you diversify your investment into a given field or market, you're not just diversifying your risk, you're also diversifying your opportunity. So as an example, I bought Dogecoin years ago. Now, didn't really know what I was doing, but I was sticking to my principles of diversifying my risk. And I bought, I don't know, a few $1,000s worth of Dogecoin, and it did nothing. And then years later, you had the Elon Musk Wall Street bets, GameStop saga, and suddenly I'm rich. Now, do I like Dogecoin? Not really.
Oh, you held. Oh, hallelujah.
Did you? Oh
you.
my God.
Wow.
Good.
So
That's
I made a
awesome.
fortune off that. And I've done it with Theta. I've done it with lots of coins. And it's not because I particularly like these coins or dislike them. It's just because I approach the market differently. I approach the market of, okay, where do I put the majority of my money? And for me, when I talk about investing, I put the majority of money in the blue chip shares. Now, you might say, I'll just touch on also the law of diminishing returns. As I mentioned before, yes, the diminishing returns may get bigger. That is, you get less each cycle, but you get much less risk as well. So I put a big portion of my money in there, and I'm not telling the people to do it. This is just my approach that's made me a lot of money. I put the majority of my money in the low risk, low return coins because I can sleep at night and they do well. Then I throw the rest of my money at the high risk, high return coins. And it seems to balance out quite well, particularly with the high risk, high return coins. A lot of them can fail and that's fine, but I only need one or two of them to come up and I'm rich. But if I only go in one coin, I'm really missing out on the opportunity to make this money in all of these other coins. Also, don't forget the law of diminishing returns doesn't discriminate. So the mathematical fact is we did a 10,000x from the very bottom to the very top of Hex. And very few people did that, but it happened to get right at the bottom and right at the top. There's your 10,000x. Now, the argument is it'll do it again. And I said, well, hang on a second. You've got the law of diminishing returns applying to any coin. Why would it not apply to Hex? So the question is, you look at the market cap. And I know some people say don't look at the market cap. You absolutely look at the market cap. Look at the market cap of the ecosystem at the moment and say, could it do a 10,000x? Now, when the market cap of Hex was $1 and Bitcoin was $1, it was actually quite easy to do a 10,000x because you had to go from $1 to 10,000 times $1. When you've got a market cap of $1 billion, as an example, or $1 trillion where Bitcoin has been before, to do a 10,000x on that, that's really hard. That's really hard, which just goes back to the first principles. The earlier you get in, the bigger the risk, but the bigger return. So the question is now, where I get a little bit nervous is where people say, well, Hex did 10,000x before, so what says it couldn't do 10,000x again? It's like, well, hang on a second. We've just said that Bitcoin has a law of diminishing returns, which is true. Why doesn't Hex have a law of diminishing returns? It's like, oh, no, we're different. It's like, no, it's maths. The numbers is that when you have a market cap of $1, it's a lot easier to do a 10,000x than when you've got a market cap of $1 billion. That's just a mathematical effect. It's not impossible, but it's just less probable.
I hear what you're saying, Stokesy, but I agree. There is always the diminishing returns thing, and to say that something's going to do a 10,000x, if you get a 20x, like you got to pat yourself on the back these days. Like if you're getting 100, if you're getting 100x, well, you've made it. So PHEX chart, it's a separate coin. So and there's still a lot of gatekeeping. So I think a lot of the the things that happened back then, like a lot of the conditions maybe have been replicated in some ways, definitely not 100% replicated. But the gatekeeping didn't stop it last time. I definitely would hate to leave people with the impression that I think they're going to get a 10,000x. I think in any coin, if you get a 20x, you've done supremely well. And the way that I'm kind of seeing my investments is that you must have conviction in a couple of coins, whatever that is. Is it BTC? Is it ETH? Is it HEX? Is it PulseChain? And for me, I would put 65% of my crypto money into what I have conviction in. But then you have to hedge. Like we're not silly. Like you do have to have a hedge. Is that a 10% hedge, a 20% hedge, a 30, a 40% hedge? What is your hedge? Everybody must have a hedge, which is why I designed this next question, which is a totally degenerate question, designed to help people with their hedge, which I don't believe should be on PulseChain, guys. If you're going to have a hedge, maybe choose a different chain. I think the tribalism in crypto is breaking down a little bit. It's good for us all, guys. Have your conviction, yes. Have your hedge as well. That's smaller than your conviction bags. But here's the question. So Adam, can you please give us your top 3 to 5 altcoins that you think will be the highest performing this cycle?
Whew. Let's go. I want to hear this, Adam.
Okay. No matter what I say, it's going to trigger some people. So I've got, can we, well, put away my Bitcoin so there's no argument there. I've got my Bitcoin, I've got my Ethereum, and I've got my Pulse and PulseX, and what else have I got? And Hex.
Ink and Hex. Well done.
Yeah, so let's put those aside because they're already locked up. So now let's yonder into the blue ocean, the deep blue ocean of the crypto land. So at the moment, things move very quickly. Okay, and I agree with what you said that a 20x is good money. So I've been in real estate for years, and if I could make 2x, my apologies, if I could double the value of my property portfolio in 1 year, man, that would be spectacular. Yet when we come over to crypto and say, oh, I've only doubled my money, it's like, dude, that's great. You've doubled your money in a year. If you 10x your money, that is fantastic. But what happens is newbies come in and they say, no, that guy there did 10,000x on Dogecoin and Hex and Ethereum. That 18-year-old made $10 million off a $100 investment.
18-year-old.
Yeah, and that's all I
Throw that in there.
Yeah, I want to do that. So I give you these coins. So BNB, in the first instance, has proven itself over and over again. No matter what the United States threw at it, no matter what Australia threw at it, it is currently still at position 4, and it has done very well. Noting where it stands poised in the Asian markets, I've got a big bag of BNB. I don't think it's going to do crazy returns, but I like BNB. I then go on to Solana. I don't like Solana, but I don't let my ego get in the way of profits. I do not discriminate against profits. As long as I'm not breaking the law or doing anything immoral, I do not let my ego get in the way of profits. So I like BNB. I like Solana. I don't like XRP, but I hedged money in XRP because if XRP does half of what it's supposed to do, as they've been telling us for years of what it's supposed to do, I'm going to make a lot of money on XRP. That doesn't mean I like XRP, but again, I don't discriminate against profits. I put my money in there. The XRP army will hate me if XRP goes up. They'll be like, haha, we told you it was going to go up. And I'm like, I'm rich. I just made a lot of money off it. And they're going to hate that even more. I've got money in Cardano because it's a competitor to Ethereum. Now, although it hasn't done much, the reality is it's been there for a long time and it's still in position 8. I really like Avalanche because of the partnerships it's got with a lot of other companies. I haven't got much in Polkadot. I'm not investing in Dogecoin because I've already made my money. I'm not in Tron, but then I do like the layer 2 solutions for Ethereum. Polygon, Matic, and Chainlink. I think at the moment, if you want to look at massive returns on layer 2 solutions, you're looking at Polygon and Chainlink. But the counter to my own argument there is that, well, what if Pulse succeeds? What if Cardano succeeds? What if Avalanche or Polkadot succeeds? Do we even need Polygon or Chainlink? Because they're layer 2s primarily to supplement and support the Ethereum ecosystem. We then go further down. I've always liked Litecoin, not to make a lot of money off it. I've mined a lot of Litecoin. It's just a nice, stable, clean, basic, low risk, low return coin. As we go further down, we need to look at Near Protocol. I would recommend you look at Near Protocol. Some big development on Near. Injective, I'm not sure if it's already done its run, but there's a lot of confidence in there. Hedera H bar is something to look at. Monero I like for its functionality, not so much for its return. Kronos CRO, I don't think it's going to be a huge run. People knock CRO because of what happened in the last cycle. It's done very well. It's not going to make you a massive return, but it's proven itself by surviving what happened in the last run. Although it spent a lot of money on advertising, people criticize that. I'm like, hey, it's a company. They put money in advertising. The whole market pulled back. So be it. If we look at the logistical supply chain of what VeChain has claimed it can do, if that does actually work with VeChain, VeChain will, in my mind, save a lot of lives when it comes to medicine, baby formula, car parts, avionic parts. If it can deliver what it's supposed to do, I think VeChain has a very big future. Beyond then, maybe Multiverse X. I've lost confidence in Algorand. Some people like Render. I haven't invested in it, and I think Aave has a place in this ecosystem as well. But if you want to get the sick returns, like the crazy returns, you can't shop in the top 100 market cap. You've really got to go into the top 10,000 and 15,000 market cap. A lot of these coins are going to zero, but that doesn't mean you can't make sick returns in the meantime. The majority of my money is in the low risk, low return coins. The rest of my play money, I roll the dice, and every now and then I get a Theta, I get a Dogecoin, I get a Hex, and I get stupidly rich off it. You have to diversify. Finally, I'd mention, don't forget the metaverse. I've spread my risk across Axie Infinity, the Sandbox, and Mana, just to see what happens there. Although Helium, not metaverse, now we're talking on to a new internet system. My only concern with Helium that has done very well in recent times is when coins are dependent on hardware as well as software. Time has shown that they don't do so well. I like Helium. I like the concept of HNT. I'm just worried about that hardware component. I think the stupid gains are going to come in a coin that we haven't even listed yet. We haven't even mentioned. There is a coin somewhere in the deep blue ocean of the crypto land that is about to do a 10,000x. And ultimately, I put this out to the viewers. If you can find that, tell me and I'll pay you because I'm investing in it.
Love
That
it,
was
Adam.
Pepe,
Great work.
Adam. You already killed it in Pepe.
Pepe was another one. Yeah, that was a good example. So Pepe, people actually, thank you, Sammy Chica, because if I may, I'll just touch on meme coins. Don't get angry at meme coins. Meme coins are what they are. Don't get angry at the market. If the market loves a Shiba Inu or a Pepe or a Dogecoin, it doesn't help anyone if you're an old man yelling at the cloud saying, this isn't fair. Pepe is this and Pepe is that. Crypto is what it is. You know, you roll the dice, you have a bit of fun. There's going to be a meme coin that comes up. It's going to be another Pepe. It's going to be another Dogecoin. It's going to be another Shiba Inu. That's the coin that we should all be looking for at the moment. Don't go all in on it, but throw 100, not financial advice, all investment comes with risk. I'm not a financial advisor or planner, but throw $100 to $1,000 at it and you're sitting at $10 million or $1 million. It's a good day in crypto.
I agree.
Nice one,
And
nice
it's been
one.
proven. I mean, Adam, you've
Yeah.
done it. I actually did really well. Well, I didn't cash out, but I still 8x'd on Pepe from one of our guys' calls on Twitter.
Well done.
But you know, that's amazing. And you know, I think it's gonna be a meme coin. I mean, they just go stupid. You know, everything else will do really well, but meme coins, I reckon they're gonna do the best this bull run.
Yeah,
There's a
the
lot out
market's
there.
irrational.
There's a lot out there, and for a lot of people that are getting a little bit, you know, overwhelmed during the bear market, it was a long time, you know, to wait for the coins to go up a little bit. I would say you need to diversify, but just be careful of how many coins you're diversifying into. Maybe choose like 2 or 3. Like maybe use like say 20%. This is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. I don't do this as my in real life job. But like if you were going to use 10 or 20% of your degen money, maybe just choose a couple coins, maybe one meme coin with a smaller amount of money. Like for me, I look at like the top 10 altcoins that haven't been targeted by the SEC, because if they're going to make these ETFs for BTC and Ethereum, there's going to be an altcoin ETF. And what do you think they're going to put in there? They're going to put Link in there, of course, because of those bug eater people. So AVAX and Link, it's not like the most terribly well thought out plan, guys, but AVAX and Link, everyone's talking about it and they're not mentioned by the SEC. So that's my thoughts. And then with the NEAR and the INJ, I've been thinking about those as well as like a tiny, tiny, tiny play. I haven't quite stepped into them yet. And it's the first time I'm hearing of VChain, which I'm excited to learn about because obviously my background's in medicine. So
I wrote all these down too, class.
so Hodpro and Sammy, yeah, I know, Adam, you've been so good to listen to. We're going to wrap it up. I have one final question that actually comes from 43OG. But before we do the final question, Hodpro and Sammy, do you want to partake in this altcoin degenerative discussion?
Yeah, I do. I'll go real quick. I siphon, my name's Hodpro. It implies that I hold coins for a long time, which I do. But I do give myself a little percentage of degen because there's a part of me that is just a gambling nutcase, and I love this sort of thing, and it's fun. But don't do it with most of your tokens, please. What I personally do, even with meme coins, is read the white paper. Don't wait for, if you want to get in early, like you said, okay, you got the early first movers advantage. Go to the telegrams. Don't wait for somebody to have to necessarily make the YouTube video on it. Find out what's being made, read the white paper, learn how to read GitHub, get enough knowledge to know what you're looking at. Because even some of these meme coins can be quite complicated, and if you know how they are complicated and you have a heads up, you can make quite a bit of an X on such. So even meme coins have a white paper. Don't be too casual when you really want to go and research. That's how I do it, and that's how you get in early, is read that white paper immediately. Then make your decision.
Yeah. And on Dex Screener, you can go to any chain and they'll say there's a list on the side that says new coins, and you can actually get in there when they're just launching. That's another way of looking. We're going to the website and things like that.
Nice one, Sammy. Guys, we're going to wrap it up, but before we do, shout out to King Daniel. King Daniel shows gratitude on Twitter every single day. He posts his fitness stuff, his mindset stuff. He's actually been a part of the community for years, just hanging out, in spaces. He has created his own ecosystem called Headhunters. Do your own research. It's on PulseChain. They've got some sick-looking NFTs, just for disclosure. I have been given some NFTs which I've staked, and I don't plan on unstaking. And he's an all-round just like a good person. And he's an example of somebody who's like trying to make more of his life, and he's trying to make it big out there. So if you could give him a follow on Twitter and learn what he's about, not necessarily just to invest in his product, but just to follow him and support his fitness journey, his mindset journey, I'd appreciate that. And the last question, guys, comes from 43OG, if that's okay, Adam. Okay, so 43OG, this is his question. I've reworded it. We've all been excited about liquid loans on PulseChain. Recently, the ATO updated their website on the guidance for DeFi borrowing and lending, making it a capital gains event. No new legislation, but it is on their website. What is your take on this?
It's the old system versus the new system. So the interesting thing with liquid loans is all it's doing is taking how people extract value out of a capital asset that's going up in value in an old model and applying it to a new model. So as an example, if I've got a downtown apartment in New York, I'll say a whole building. So let's say I own $100 million skyscraper in New York, and I want to go on a $1 million holiday. How do I get $1 million out of that skyscraper? Well, I could sell it, but if I sell it, I'm going to pay tax on it, and I lose the appreciation, the future appreciation of this asset that continually goes up, as well as any revenue it's making from the rent. So what the rich do is they simply borrow against that asset. So A, they don't pay tax, and B, they don't lose the asset. That's why people borrow against these assets. What Liquid Loans has done, and other systems, is that it said, well, let's apply that same model to crypto. Instead of selling my pulse, how do I extract value out of my pulse that will continue to go up in value in theory, and I don't want to pay tax on that sale, because when I sell it, it's a capital gains tax. Where the two worlds are clashing now is that this model that I've just described is identical. You borrow against the asset, whether it's a building in New York or your PulseChain or your Bitcoin or whatever. You borrow against the asset, so you keep the appreciating asset and you don't pay tax on it. The big difference at the ATO, which is the Australian Taxation Office, and all taxation offices around the world, as I mentioned previously, is that the old financial tools for the old financial system are now compromised, in the sense that instead of going to the bank to borrow against your asset with a bank, we now go to a platform such as Liquid Loans to borrow against that asset using not a bank, but a protocol to borrow against it. So now governments and banks who are in bed with each other, they're saying, well, hang on a second, even though they're not breaking the rules, even though they're doing what we've been doing for years, they're taking our market share. Now, who's in charge? Is it the government? Is it the banks? Or is it the lobbyists? I know I don't know. But ultimately, what I do know is that those who lobby governments seem to get the governments in, and those governments who get in typically do what the lobbyists do. Then you ask, well, where does the money come from? So this is a long way of saying the Australian Taxation Office, which is the government, essentially, is now trying to appease not only their ability to get money out of the people, but also appease the donators, appease the lobbyists, appease the government, appease those who have put them in this position of power. So what we're seeing now is, I think, as decentralized finance comes in, and it's here to stay, the question is, how does the Australian Taxation Office extract value out of these new systems, but don't do it in a way that annoys their lobbyist funding companies who fund the banks or are the banks and push money into old financial systems? We're going to see an epic battle here. We're going to see an epic battle between new financial systems, which is crypto and decentralized platforms and liquid loans, etc., versus the old financial systems, which is fiat and banks and lending protocols. The tax man is kind of sitting in the middle and saying, look, as long as I get my cut here.
The taxman has hedged their bets because they put it on their website. They didn't change the legislation. So people like Jixer, they're like, you haven't changed the legislation. Then people like 43OG or like Doza, my husband, are like, guys, it's on the official website. So there's I feel like even the taxman is hedging the bets a little bit there.
Yep, absolutely. And the best thing, if I could say, the best thing about the Australian Taxation Office, what they did for crypto, was they legitimised crypto by taxing it. And
they mentioned it. They mentioned DeFi. I'm actually really proud they have these pages that say crypto and DeFi.
They've been reading it.
The argument that we should all give normies, when normies say, it doesn't matter what coin, if they say, no, crypto's a scam, you say, well, why is the Australian Taxation Office
why are they
taxing
mentioning it by name and decentralized finance?
The Taxation Office doesn't tax scams. They refer it to the Australian Federal Police and they shut down the scam. So the sheer fact that any taxation office anywhere taxes this asset, as frustrating as it is, it legitimizes the asset
us,
and
exactly.
allows us to
and
move
we
forward.
do want to pay our taxes properly. And I saw that tax video that you did, and I appreciate that. And yeah, every year we try to pay our tax, because in Australia, Crocodile Dundee is a lesson. Like, it's, you know, he's the guy that was made an example of, right? So we know the importance of paying tax in Australia. We're not here to avoid tax. We're mum and dad investors. We're the middle class. We've got in real life jobs. We pay a crap load of tax already, but we want to legally invest in cryptocurrency. Let's tie it up, guys. So, Adam, do you have any comments that you weren't able to say? Any ideas you haven't finished? And then we'll round it off.
Look, I'm just very grateful that you invited me on. If I may commend you for doing what you do. That is, we need more females in this space. I don't know why there's not more women in this space. If you look across most YouTube channels, there's about 4 to 6% female participation. I interviewed Natalie Brunel a long time ago. I actually went to university with her without knowing, in the United States. She's a female commentator who's doing very well on the global stage. And I asked her, why aren't there more women in this space? And she said, oh, well, it's a kind of blokey environment. And I kind of challenge that in the sense that right now we're all sitting in our safe space, whether it's our home or our office or our studio or whatever. You know, we're all in here together. There's no danger in here when it comes to, harassment beyond the trolls that we all face on the internet, irrespective of gender. And as we see the greatest wealth shift in the history of humanity, I want the girls to be along on this ride. It shouldn't be 90%, 96% male participation. It should be 50-50, because why not? You want everyone involved in this wealth shift. And I think the work that you girls are doing is so important. And I encourage you to, get more girls on side, bring them in, let them understand that it's okay to ask questions. It's not a blokey space. It's a financial space. It's a space of curiosity and exploration and investing and risk. And so the more girls that we can get in this space, the better it is for everyone, because when this wealth shift happens, which is happening, I want you girls, all girls, to be on the ride to enjoy in these sick gains that we're about to make.
Oh, thanks, Adam. Appreciate that. For some reason, PulseChain has like a plethora of streaming ladies. So I often stream with 4 to 6 ladies like at a time. And yeah, I don't know, for some reason we're really blessed like that. And in crypto, and I tell this when I'm on spaces and stuff, when the man versus woman thing comes up, I've never been so supported by men as I have been in crypto. I've got more followers because I'm a woman. I get more support. All of my subs are like, most of them are men. I've been nothing but supported by the men in the space. So I would encourage women interested in crypto who are worried about being on social media. You can tailor your social media to your own liking. You can use the block button, the mute button. You can come on the show with a bunch of ladies and just have a chat. We're all pretty easygoing. So appreciate you, Adam. And I've never had such a long stream. I work in an emergency department, and I'm often interrupted 10 times every 5 minutes. And that's not a joke. I'll be sitting down working on an ECG with someone and I'll get 10 interruptions, and that's my life. So, which is why I need to stream with multiple people, because I'm like a little squirrel. So the fact that I could sit still for 2 hours is actually the first time I've done it, because I had so many questions for you and I was really interested in all of your answers. So thank you so much for being here, and we appreciate your time on this stream.
I'm honored to have a first with you.
Thank you. Sammy, time for your rounded off comments. Anything you didn't get to say? Shout outs.
Well, thanks again for inviting me, Claire. Always great to see you and Hobprawl. And, you know, I love streaming with the women. It's always a lot of fun. I've made a lot of female friends in the space and a lot of male friends. And I love crypto and I love hanging out with you guys. Adam, it was awesome to meet you. I've watched many of your shows. And when I first started out with crypto, I used to watch you a lot. I think you're amazing, and I think you're an asset to the crypto space, especially the Aussies who can actually relate to you, down to earth, very mature and intellectual approach. So I'm going to keep on watching you, and hopefully we'll meet again soon.
Well said, Sammy.
Thank you so much.
I think when it comes to women in crypto, in general, a lot of crypto people are just in for the adrenaline pumping 4 in the morning, degen, just jump, high test, gamble, and that just tends to lend itself to more of a high testosterone user base. But there are also other ways: stables, Monero, Bitcoin, whatever you're going to do. There are spaces for women if you say, okay, not only might this asset actually hold its price against the dollar, whatever fiat that's going down in your respective country, but it might go up a little bit, but it's not all degenerate throw in meme coins, and a lot of people aren't aware of that. And I am faithful that with enough time, the truth will get out to more normal people. Even if the stuff is rather complicated, people will see it as less of a degenerate gamble and more of a hedge against what they have. And I think when that really comes to fruition with the normal crowd, more women will be more comfortable to come in and add crypto to their safety net.
Well said, Hodbro.
Thanks for coming on. Yeah, it was an amazing stream.
I think it's one of the best streams I've ever had. So thanks. Thank you, Adam. Thank you to Richard Hart for PulseChain, and I wish you the best in your coming up with the discovery hearing. And the community really does wish you all the best, and thank you for PulseChain. And we'll see you on the flip side of that. And I hope everybody in the chat has a really nice night or day. And thank you all for being here and for your support. Have a good one, guys. Thanks, Adam Stokes, for being here. Thanks, Sammy Chica. Thanks, Hodbro.
Thanks,
ladies.
Thank you.
See ya.